Assalamu alaikum. Imam Earl has got me in big trouble now. There are a lot of doctors of the Imam's philosophy in our community, and we all learn from them, our Imams. And I appreciate the Imam's recognition of some of the things that I have written. And I'm more of a writer than a speaker. Some people can articulate things the way maybe I put it in pen. But when it comes to me and speaking, see now, Imam Antar, he got the fire, he got the inspiration. He said he's got to tone his energy down. Me, I'm just the opposite. I'm a little more low-keyed. I need to figure out how to rev the energy up. So, when you hear me just kind of bouncing along, bear with me. Look for what I'm going to say. And I benefited a lot from what Sister Zakiya Nutman said too. Her presentation was a beautiful flow, very comforting, very soothing. And I want to just take a minute to give a recognition to something that happened years ago. Many of you know that I've been building a library called the IWDM Study Library, where we've been getting collections from the lectures of the Imam throughout the country, and then we digitize them, and then we're putting them all into a library and getting them transcribed. So we have lots of lectures, audios, and videos, and you don't know what's on those tapes or lectures, but if you digitize them, get them into writing, then the research can be done, and it'll be a great resource. Like Abraham digging the wells, leaving some Zamzam wells around for people to be able to drink from, in the future, decades from now. But Sister Zakiya, her husband, Imam Armainu, many of us remember him. He was one of our first, if not the first, most profound collectors and documenters of our history, recording the lectures. And over the years, he built a massive collection of tapes, and he had it organized. And I remember when starting the project and reaching out to folks, and of course, me and Imam Arma, we had a relationship and have done some sharing, some work together on a dictionary as well. And so when I went to her, to see if they would share the collection, Imam Arma had passed, and Sister Zakiya was there in the house, and she was managing and handling everything, but there were a lot of challenges going on, and the tapes were down there. She said, I have them all here. I would be happy to share them with the library so that, they're there. They don't just sit in the basement. And so we had an extensive process where, gathering all of that massive collection, and then we stored it in a storage unit. And over years, with the help of one of the most prolific helpers that we've had in this cause, younger brother named Imam Mujahideen Muhammad, he was instrumental. He was so good. He was making bean pies and recording, doing the digitizing on a real time, because the 90-minute tape, it took 90 minutes for him to digitize it. I had bought this high-speed duplicator, so I could take a 90-minute tape and do it in 5 minutes. And Mujahideen outdid me in terms of copying those lectures. He was so fast. I just gave him my digitizer. I said, you're so good. They don't need me. You take this, And he really blasted them out. But alhamdulillah, she's one of our best collections, Sister Zakiya. She, no matter, even though she wasn't sure and she was dealing with life and everything, she didn't discard those tapes. They stayed there until the time was right and something very valuable could be done with them. Because, unfortunately, there were a number of people who had big collections too, but they discarded them over time when they had to move or downsize. But Zakiya held on fast, alhamdulillah for that. Shukran, Sister Zakiya. Makes all the difference in the world. And, Imam Hassan, I really enjoyed your comments. They touched me in a few ways personally, and some of the things. But he was joking about he didn't have his notes, And he's right. When you speak from the heart, things tend to come out nice. Me, on the other hand, being a writer, I have a tendency to overproduce in my notes. And I rarely get finished with what I have to say. And then if I don't get a chance to, really go through my notes, then I got all these notes and I can't, my speech is not as flowing. So you guys will have to bear with me because that happened this time around. But inshallah, I just want to share a few ideas from us on the essentials of Ramadan. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, I do believe in Allah, the creator of the skies and the earth and all in between. I do believe in Muhammad, the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best example, most excellent example for human beings. I do believe in the knowledge body of my Imam, our Imam, Warithuddin Muhammad, the Mujaddid, his language and his logic. And I am so happy. I do believe in our community. How we were fashioned, where we're supposed to go. And even though it's challenging, sometimes when we look at things, it looks a little challenging. As Imam Hassan was saying, in the Quran, when the prophets came to the people, and their people were making reasons why they rejected them, one of the most prominent ones was, we're looking at you, and you don't look like you're doing that much better than us. And the people are following you. They're some of the worst people in the world. Why should we follow you? You don't have anything impressive. Where's your miracle? Why hasn't he sent it down? So we don't see a reason to go with you guys. And Allah answers that argument. He just tells the believers, hold on to what you've been given. Hold on to the light that you've seen. Be steadfast and keep working and keep striving, and soon your striving will be seen. And that's the only answer. The only proof that comes when we're able to manifest in time through diligence what we know we saw. And some of the people, they get it at first, but over time, like the children of Israel wandering in the desert, they thought they were going to the promised land. And after a while, they're like, man, there ain't nothing around here. We had more stuff than we had before. And after a while, they might as well go back to that because this is a joke. Never realizing that the promise was the freedom that you have to build what you want, to build what God put in you, to build upon the guidance. You have the freedom to do it. The promise is here, but you have to make it happen. So today we're talking about the essentials of Ramadan. And I want to read these 3 verses that deal with Ramadan for a particular reason. Imam Antar and Imam Hassan mentioned these, but I'm going to read these for a reason. Surah 2:185. The month of Ramadan in which was sent down the Quran. It is guidance for humanity and clear proofs of the guidance. And it is the Furqan, the criterion. So the first point, we know in Ramadan we're fasting and everything. But one of the things I want us to hold on to is that during this period, during this month, guidance, clear proofs, and the criterion for Quran. These are the essences of the value of what has come down. Surah 44, ayats 2-6. By the book that makes things clear, we sent it down during a blessed night, for we wish to warn. In the night is made distinct every affair of wisdom by command from our presence. For we constantly send the revelations, the guidance, the clarity as a mercy from our guardian Lord. So now we move from a month to the day in a night. Now it comes down clear wisdom, distinct wisdom of every affair in a single night. The last verses, Surah 97, 1 through 5. We have indeed revealed this message in the night of power. And what will explain to thee what the night of power is? The night of power is better than 1,000 months. Therein come down the angels and the Spirit by Allah's permission on every errand. Peace until the rise of the morning, as the Imam had told us. So here, very specific. So we have this night now that the Quran comes down. And we are told, and we're asked, so what is this night? So now we're going to get a description of this night. And it's better than 1,000 months. And in this night, angels are on the scene. The Spirit, the Ruh of Allah is on the scene. And they're coming with on every errand, it says. Now, a question that we'll hold on to. Here we read the Quran was revealed in one night. But we also know that it was revealed over a period of 23 years. So how do we understand this? How is this reconciled? How do we perceive it? And I'm going to give the comment. There is an answer that the majority of Muslims have when they address this issue. And but there's something I want to add to that picture. I don't want to take away from that, that picture, but just hopefully I can communicate what I'd like to add to that. But we'll put it there until after we go through some of my comments on what Ramadan is itself. Now, the Imam made some comments regarding rituals. He says, Muslim holidays are not to be taken as just rituals or empty rituals. Everything that Allah did through Prophet Muhammad was done to bring the people out of darkness, not keep them in darkness. To bring them out of the darkness of empty ritualism or empty formalities. For example, one of the biggest things when we talk about shirk, one of the problems with it is, if you got a statue here you think it's God and you got all kind of rituals going on to this statue, but really there's no substance to that. And so it's really empty and you're just doing it. And so the Prophet's mission was to help bring us out of these things that would give us light and understanding. He says, empty gestures, empty traditions are no more than just a show and do no more than just kind of whet the appetite, but never satisfies. These things are there to help attract us to think. And he says, everything that you see operating in the universe is something to provoke thought, to make you think. And he also added that, the rituals contain wisdom and the knowledge. It preserves the knowledge. And so therefore we have to look into it. Now, Imam Kashif Abdul Karim from Hartford, Connecticut, who's a very, very learned and intelligent one amongst us, on Facebook, there was the flyer was put out there and somebody asked the question. They wanted to know, what Jews was he going to be using during his presentation at the Ramadan session? I guess, in order to give the proofs. And so I didn't really know what he was going to do. So I just happened to call him. We just had a little chat about it. And he's going to elaborate, of course, next week, because that's one of his topics, right? The meaning of the rituals. But he said something that was very, very good to me. He said, we all know that whenever and we'll just use the 5 pillars as an example, these are these contain rituals that we practice. And they consist of the actions, the practice that we do. But we know that they carry deeper meaning as well. So, we pray, there's a way we pray, but we know that prayer, the purpose of it is for cultivation, inner cultivation. It develops the spirit. We know we give the zakat, we give the 2.4 or 5%, we say, right? And we give the charity. But we know that charity is broader. It's the principle of trying to increase, giving yourself to something to help increase its benefit. And you can elaborate on the essence of that practice, of that ritual. The same thing with the Ramadan. We've heard it quoted. We know that we're learning to self-discipline, learning to empathize with the poor. But the ritual is certain things we do. But there's a bigger or deeper principle that, goes into that ritual. And so Imam Muhammad has given a lot of elaboration, a lot of commentary on these practices, on these rituals. And so for us, in this particular orientation, we take some of those explanations for ourselves, and then we put them to use in our lives. Other people may not take those orientations, but we take these orientations because there's a truth in this. And for myself, there is a verse, when I was trying to get a better grasp on the foundation of Imam Muhammad's taking this step. Surah 22, ayat 67, there it reads that, to every people we have appointed rites or rituals. Mensuk means pious, your ceremonies, your rituals, your devotions, things you do. And these ceremonies which they must follow. Let them not dispute with thee, talking about Muhammad, don't let them dispute with you about the rituals you have introduced. But do invite them to thy Lord, for you are assuredly on the Hudan Mustaqim. So when I think of this, the Hudan Mustaqim is guidance. And our Imam's commentary on Mustaqim from Key Imam is to stand up, but it is to rise up in a vertical path, not just horizontally. So in these rituals are guidance that elevates us, that brings us to a higher elevation. So if we only know the surface of the rituals, how high does that elevate us? How far up does it take us, help us to ascend? But we know from the kind of tafsir we've received, that wisdom, if internalized and assimilated and then manifested through our actions, can elevate us way up, very high. And so on the strength of that, I felt very comfortable with why the Imam gave us, he was blessed with these insights and understandings. And this verse in the Quran here helps us understand why he looked into it. Because Hudan Mustaqim should be found in the guidance of those practices. Now, we know Ramadan is a big exercise. It's a training, right? When we go through that practice, the first thing that happens is we start breaking down the things that are, that we're not to, we're used to something, but after a while it starts to wear on you and it starts to break you down. It's kind of like when you're exercising to get stronger, you have to tear the muscles down. You tear the cells down, but then those cells come back stronger. And so this training over and over again for the individual, but of course our creation and our resurrection is as one person. So what happens for a person is also true for the society or the community. So this training, we Muslims, we got to do this for ourselves. We're training ourselves, we're developing ourselves, we're exercising many things during this month. But as a community, we also need to exercise and train. And that's one of the messages that comes out of this ritual, is that in order to get to the place, you got to exercise, you got to train. Are we training as a community? Where is our training? What are we working and exercising ourselves to develop? What kind of muscles are we developing? Is it only to call the adhan? Is it only to be able to make ruku, sajda? What is the community development training that's going on? That strengthens those muscles and chisels that form, that body. Because, you know, we were taught, right, with form, some say with function. If you have a function, you know what form you need. Others say the form that you have will help determine the function. So the training helps create a form, the form that you want, that enables you to function the way you want. If we want to do as Imam Hassan said and transform and have an impact on the world, we have to create the forms that we need to be able to function, to perform the function. A bird with no wings will not fly, no matter how much it prays. Ramadan also is a time it deconstructs and it reconstructs. And there was a lot in this, but I'm just going to say, you know, we know that it means to burn. And so what happens when you put something in the fire? The fire changes its composition. Now, when you put it in the fire, if it's a weaker substance, if it's a weak substance, it'll burn up, turn to ashes, and you can sweep it away. And we know that the falsehoods and the weaknesses and the vices, these things have no substance. And what do we do during Ramadan? See, Ramadan is God's prescription. Then we take those weak things and we put it into conflict with that, and that friction heats up. And eventually, the truth of God and the practice burns it up. And those appetites, those weak things, they go away. And that transforms the composition. Now, there are other things that can withstand some heat. But, you know, when you add heat to anything, it expands the molecules. And that expansion is what makes something flexible. You know, you can melt the gold down, and then you can reshape it, right? You can put a little heat on the clay, not too much because you'll make it hard, but you heat it up and it gets soft, and then you can reshape it, reconstruct it, fashioning it into the form, into what it needs to be. And so Ramadan helps prepare us and get us ready to reshape ourselves. And on the larger scale, this is how we can reshape the community. We have to put ourselves in that flame, in that heat, in that exercise, in that training, in that discipline. And only through working out, you gotta feel the hurt, and then you get back, and then you can do it. Then you become capable. So now the patterns of the fast. What about the patterns? Let's talk about the major themes or the major practices that we go through. In that beginning of the fast, what is the first thing we do? We're searching for the Hillel. We go out and we look into a sky, into not even just a sky, but everywhere we look at it, it's a picture of darkness. It's a picture where we can't see, but we're looking for something. We're searching for something. When Muhammad the Prophet was with his people, Jahiliyyah all around him, darkness all around him. And he went climbing the cave trying to get a little higher because he wanted to get, he said, maybe I can get close enough to see something that can help or change this situation. When we're out there looking, and this is why, we have these debates about whether we need to cite the Hillel, follow the tradition and go out and look with our own eyes, versus maybe use the calendar that people develop, or, hear from someone else, in another time zone somewhere. The Imam, his orientation was that here in the continental USA, we go out and look and we cite. And there were times when he said we can use science to help us and guide us towards with the citing. But we want to go and keep that practice alive because it keeps the people looking at God's creation for signs. It's a tradition. I mean, the crescent that we see during the month of Ramadan is no different than it is in any of the other months. The sky isn't a magical sky. Even the month of Ramadan. Why is the month of Ramadan special? Does it have some special feature or quality that the other months don't have? No, it's special because that was when the revelation came. And it was that momentous event that began a transformation. And so it was used, it's used as to preserve that idea, that concept, that practice. So we look up into the sky, searching. And what does it mean when you are out there looking in the darkness and you don't see? It means you got faith. See, when you have faith is when you keep going for something even though you can't see it yet. But you have faith, it's gonna come. And then eventually, something in that process, eventually that crescent, that light shines and shows itself, right? And it reveals itself, and it's the beginning of light coming into darkness. And that sets off, that glimmer of light, just like in the mind. You know, when you are researching a medical problem, or a medical student, or we are trying to solve any kind of problem in our life, and you work on it, and you can't see the answer. You don't know how to figure it out yet. But you keep at it, you have faith that it's going to come, and then it comes, and you get a glimmer of it, and it automatically says, now I know where to go. And then you put your energies into it. And a transformation begins. And then most of the masajids now around the world, right after we see the sighting, we immediately, we engage in the practice of Taraweeh. Now, this is an optional practice. And, I sometimes debated whether to include it or not, but it is widespread, and it does also have a good significance. And essentially, with the Taraweeh prayers, they're basically longer than our obligatory prayers. Right? So we have 4 rakahs as our longest fard prayer, but the Taraweeh can be 8 rakahs. Some go in 4s all the way up to 20. And this is just a sign of when you first get an inspiration and you see, the light begins to come on, you always become more dedicated. You stretch out then. It's like the new believer who comes in and finally grabs it. And they're going with fire. They want to do everything. They can do it all. When enlightenment comes, just as we were, when it hit our mind, when we saw our light, we're in motion. We're doing everything. We're going to the masjid all the time. We're involved in this and that and the other. You see, this is what happens. And the Taraweeh just shows us, when it hits you, something dramatic happens and you get a quickening spirit. Moses fell out in a swoon when it hit him. Wow. Next thing we know, he going up against Pharaoh, And he was like me. He had a knot in his tongue. He said, I can't even speak, but I'm going to talk to the joker. Prophet Muhammad said, somebody wrapped me up. I must be going crazy. Put me in the straight jacket. Something's wrong. I know this. I know what I saw. But no, it can't be real. It impacts us and begins our journey. And the third sign or big feature is the suhoor, right? That meal. Now here we are. We get a glimpse, but then we gotta go back to sleep, right? We're back in that darkness. Back to sleep. Resting away. But then when the time comes around, that spark of consciousness, today we call it an alarm clock, But if you imagine, once as many of you know, those who are very diligent in there, you can train your body and your biological clock, So if you've been doing it You know, you that time comes, you kind of know. So if you didn't have it, but alarm clock keeps you safe, right? But we have provisions for making things up. But at any rate, so that spark of consciousness, it wakes us up, and we start to come back again, and we're foggy, we're groggy. We got to go refreshing ourselves. But what do? We take the meal in the morning, and we're told, and it's recommended that we take of the natural, the water and the fruits, right? The natural things. Why? Because we are about to, it's the natural things that's going to get us going. We need to do what's natural in order to begin that journey that's ahead of us. And so that light that we saw, just, you know, we got a flicker of it when we sighted the moon. We fall back, but then we remember that light keeps us up. We got to get up because there's something we're going to do. So we take those nutrients, we get stronger, and then we're ready to go. The fourth major feature comes the time of Fajr, right? We get the strength, and once again we're looking. We're looking back in that darkness, looking for some more light. You know, you get a little glimpse, it goes away, then you got to come back and try to find it again, and it may fade away. Then you come back and look again, and then you watch it, and suddenly we see that first sign, that dark thread, the white thread that meets the dark thread. And the human, that light penetrates. And you know, I had this beautiful experience once. I went to there's a big lookout mountain in down where I live in Jersey, and I was up there, went up there so I could watch Fajr come in. And you know, when that thread came, because you can look out and you see all across the horizon, and it's so broad, you know, you can see the curvature, you know, and the light would come in, and you know what it looked like? It was like I was standing inside the center of the pupil. And I seen the light just like when you first start to open your eye, you can see just a thin thing of light. And when that light comes, you know, you can see the little buildings out, but you can't really make them out. You can see things down there, but it's obscure. But as the time goes on and the light grows, it looks like the eye is just opening up, like the eyelid is just opening up. And as more light comes in, you can see more of what's out there in the description. And so this light begins to penetrate and overtake the darkness, and the human begins on the road to connecting back with his Creator. And we're getting ready because we're going to put our appetites and our free spirit, that jinn nature in us, to do what we want to do. We're going to put it in check, and we're going to start our prayer. We're going to cultivate the spirit and develop our inner self, and then we're reading, because we're trying to remember and take in more and more of the light as it grows in us. So the mind is under cultivation and the heart is under cultivation. And then we begin to fast, the next major feature, the restraining of the appetites. And we restrain during the daylight hours. And why is that? You know, during the daylight hours is the time of productivity. Now the light's bright, we can see what's going on, right? We have rational development, we're producing things that have meaning, and we can be, we can get so involved in it that you can think, hey, everything's going well. I don't need what I need Allah for. Don't worry about it. Things are good. I'm feeling strong. We're building. We're doing. And you can forget. And then also, when we restrain during Ramadan, and we're keeping out the weaknesses, we're keeping out the things that clog our minds and hearts, that's what enables us to be more productive. It enables us to be more rational, to have clearer sight into what we're doing. And as a consequence, we begin to shed the excess fat and impurities. You know, the fat is the weight, the things that hold us down, the things that keep us from progressing. You know, when you lose weight, you know, we get lighter, right? And so when we're lighter, we can go faster, right? So in that language, they say, you know, hey, you want to go faster, get lighter. And we can get to our goals a bit quicker. Also, you know, I had to put my shirt on, I had to fasten the buttons. They say fasten is to secure, right? To keep things secure, you fasten your coat, fasten the door. When we check our appetites, when we check, you know, the wrong desires, right? It secures ourselves, it secures our natural wholesome self. So that training, that discipline, it helps us to reorganize the self and give us the power and control over self that we need to make progress. You know, Prophet Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him and bless him. His senses, his vision was clear. Clear as crystal. He could see things the right way. And when he listened to things, and when he heard things, people talking to him, things he heard through the grapevine, he kept all the impurities out so he could hear it right. His feelings, his touch, the sense of touch, his feelings were justly balanced, duly proportioned. He was siwa. It was balanced so that he could feel things. When he got a feeling about something, it was right on target. It wasn't polluted by his own opinions and appetites and desires. His sense of taste, the things that he did desire, the appetites he did have, clear and wholesome, right on balance, all the impurities out, so the natural human can do what it's created to do. And the sense of smell, his intuition. I see where you're coming from, Andre. All right, yeah, I think you're right on it, man. I can tell you're telling the truth, man. I know you're right. His senses were clear, right? His intuition got the right feel about it. Sometimes, you know, our prejudices get in the way and we think we got a feeling about something and it's really just our own thought about it, our own opinion. So, fasting gets us clear, gets the impurities out, so that it can all be working in our favor. And then we have the next major feature, the night of power. You know, this could be a really big discussion because it's connected to the concept of Qadr. You know, and Imam Muhammad gave some very interesting and intriguing commentary on the meaning of Qadr, but we can't go into it today. But it impacts some of the way you can perceive and understand what happens in the night of power. But we just have to leave it there. It's a night, you know, this word Qadr means power, and it means destiny. It also means limitations, measurement. See, a lot of people, we like to say the Qadr of Allah. But see, Allah doesn't have any limitations. Allah can't be measured. His power is unlimited. But the things he created, they have a certain power and a potential power. The things he created, they have limitations. They can be measured. And they have a destiny. They have a potential destiny. But again, we can't elaborate. So is this night on the 23rd or the 25th, the 27th, or the 29th? Some say it's an odd night. Akbar said it's the 27th. But why is it that some people experience something on the 27th and some people don't? Why is it that some people who don't subscribe necessarily to the 27th They experienced the night of power on the 23rd or the 25th, but not on the 27th. It's better than 1,000 months. So the scholars have told us, that's 83 years and some change. So this one night is better than an entire lifetime. So we need to know what kind of night is better than an entire lifetime. Yeah, it's a heck of a night, right? So Allah says on that night, the angels and the Spirit come down on every kind of command and task and errand and mission. And the clock is ticking and my time is winding down. Yeah, I'm watching that one back there, looking at where I'm at, might make it. So we know that one of the commands of the angels is to bring the revelation and the messages to the prophets and to the people. That's what the angels do. We know they're bringing revelation and they're bringing help. And they bring those messages down on the night of power. Now we know the prophet experienced the night of power, but why do we all seek it? Because we're expecting something too, aren't we? Aren't we expecting a result? We're looking for a blessing. But what is the command of the Spirit? It comes into us and it inspires life in our soul, starting the growth of something new in us. When Muhammad the prophet was in the cave, he was in the darkness and the angel Jibreel and the Spirit came to him, although the story doesn't distinctly mention the Spirit. And it's easy to only think that only Gabriel was there. So in Surah 2, Ayat 97, Allah said it is Gabriel that brings the revelation to the heart and presses and squeezed. I don't know if that verse is correct, but it was the Gabriel that pressed and squeezed, right? So the angel comes and he's pressed and he's squeezed. Now what happens to you when you're pressed and squeezed? The air is forced out of your lungs. And then when the pressure's released, you breathe it back in. You pressed again, and the air is squeezed out of your lungs, and it comes back in. It's done 3 times. There's a breathing that's involved. And when the prophet, when Jibreel was saying to him, read this, he was struggling. I can't read. The picture gives us, I can't read. Read in the name of thy Lord. But I can't. He's under a lot of stress. You ever been under a lot of stress? You ever seen your chest get tight and be like, I think I'm starting to see that, maybe I'm the messenger? Nah, I can't read that. I know that ain't what it said. Nah, that ain't it. Read it. Oh, shoot. Then he sees it. I ain't got no choice. I done seen it now. Just imagine. That's why a lot of the people who tell us that, God talked to them. And when they talk to us, we look at them and they look crazy, right? They usually are crazy. But in this case, our prophet, that when that message, that first verses came into him, it had brought in, it was his birth as the prophet. A new spirit came into him. And then Gabriel gave him the message. The inspiration came. Had to come. It wasn't there at first. It wasn't till that inspiration could get in him that opened him up. And he could see it. Now he can read the message Gabriel has for him. So then, for us on this night, beloved, what are we looking for? You know, when we've gone through that distance, you know, in the beginning of Ramadan, we just seeing a glimmer of light. By the end of Ramadan, we are having a night of power. When we discover our purpose, the revelation for you, the sight for you, the inspiration for you, and you find your purpose, your niche, and you feel like, yeah, this is what Allah wants me to see. This is what Allah wants me to do. That's better than a lifetime of ignorance. That's better than 83 years of living, but never figuring out who I am, what I'm trying to do, you know, what my life is about. This is one of the beauties of Al-Islam, is that we kind of know where the balance is, know what humans should be doing. And we're not caught up in the traps and the schemes. And that's why we should be able to progress and overcome. And so that night is a beautiful and a powerful night. And I sometimes wonder why Allah chose the first 5 verses. Surah, I forget, I didn't write it down, whatever. Anybody know? Yeah, Allah, 96, right, 96, those verses 1 through 5. You know, it tells him, read in the name of thy Lord and cherisher. I'm like, why did he start with that verse? And so when we ask the question of that person, imagine the prophet, he's in the cave. You know, there's no light switch in the cave, right? So maybe some lights, I don't know when it happened. But he's in the cave, and generally you got, you know, in your own darkness, you may have some light come in. It says, read in the name of our Lord. Now here the prophet is. What is he going to read? What's he looking at? And then it says, who created? Created man out of a clot of congealed blood, or blood adhering. Read, and thy Lord is most bountiful. He who taught the use of the pen. What is the pen? You in the cave. You don't have any notebook paper. He doesn't have a pen. What's the pen? And why is this message coming to the prophet? What does this have to do with anything that he's going through? Well, you see, what did he have to read? The only thing there was Allah's creation. Allah's creation all around him, and Allah's creation in himself. That's what he had to read. Now where's the pen? What pen was we're going to write with? It's just him. But we study his seerah all the time, don't we? What did he write? He wrote with his life. He wrote with his actions. This is how we write. Here's the pen. Pick up your pen. Write your story. Don't say, well, you got to do some of this. You know, what does God want me to do? But when you get the inspiration, and Muhammad's the example, he was on his own. And see, once you get inspired, you know what you got to do? You get some companions who say, yeah, I'm with you on that. And you go write. And make it a beautiful story. The future, you know, in Arabic grammar, the present and the future is written in the same form. Why? Because what the present shows you, what's going on in the present, is what the future is going to look like. Right now, all of you are sitting. And as long as you're sitting, that's going to be the future. The minute you all stand up, you done change the future by changing the present. So, let us write and use that pen. Verily, in the alternation of the night and the day are the signs. We've read this many times. And just quickly, there's always a darkness, and then there's always light. You see, even in darkness you strive for light, then you finally get light. But light shows you things, and so you see things, but then it also shows you what you don't know. And so you go out, you go to see what you don't know, and then you're back in darkness again. And you got to go through that process over and over again. The iftar, I'm going to do this in 3 minutes. The iftar, the breaking of the fast. Now we get a chance to relieve, relax, partake of some of the comforts of the dunya, if you will. And I want to say this. This creation, this is Allah's creation.
That's right.
It ain't Satan's creation. Shaitan is the enemy of the human.
Yes.
He can't compete with Allah. This world is Allah's world. And the believers have a claim on it. And then many things are there, we can enjoy it and still be a blessing with it. The minute we give this creation to Shaitan, we put ourselves in a buck. Now we don't like Allah's creation. We don't like it. We feel constrained by it because we think it belongs to somebody else who's doing terrible things. But you know, hey, if you were in your house and your home and people came in and started throwing garbage and polluted it, you're going to do something about it. Because that's your land. And this is true. Allah, this is creation. I'm so happy to feel like a human in Allah's creation. I mean, I just can't go in any boxes. No boxes. The iftar comes, we can enjoy things, but in balance. We're not ascetics. One of the messages of iftar is, you know, we're not ascetics. We don't withdraw from the creation. We don't withdraw from life. We embrace it. We embrace being human and the things that go with it, but within the right balance. The 8th thing, we end the fast with the sight of the moon. A lot to be said, but you know, at the end of the month, we know there's always the controversy, right? Is it 29? Is it 30? Do we do 30? Again, do the calendar? Do we look for it? But just as a little note, you know, at that end, we're looking again. Why do we look? Because we have to see evidence of when it's completed, not assumptions. So we look to see the evidence, right? And the evidence gives us the clue of when things are done. We always got to look for the evidence. Not always, but evidence is good. And so then, of course, we have the Eid al-Fitr, which is the return to the natural self. A few people commented on it, and I'm going to conclude. I didn't get to go into that little question I asked in the beginning, but we'll get it another day. But in the end, you know, there's a hadith where the Prophet relates. He says that, and this is my concluding remark, the Prophet said Allah created Adam, making him 60 cubits tall. And when he created him, what is some say 6 arm spans, right? So that's like a giant. I mean, about as tall as this building, right? He said to him, go and greet that group of angels and listen to their reply, for it will be your greeting, salutations, and the greeting. Oh, wait a minute. Thank God I lost my page. See that? Them notes, right? Where's my last page? Oh no. Let's see. There it is. So Adam said to the angel, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. And the angel said, Assalamu alayka wa rahmatullahi. That is, peace and Allah's mercy be on you. And thus the angels added to Adam's salutation the expression wa rahmatullahi. It says, any person who will enter paradise will resemble Adam. And in quotations, the translator, I guess he says, in appearance and figure. But he'll resemble Adam. And people have been decreasing in stature since Adam's creation. So Adam was the first, and he's this big giant. And every succeeding time, people are getting smaller and smaller, it said. Now we know, historically, that's not true, right? People were actually getting a little bigger. But what are we to understand here? See, when we return to our natural self, the way our prophet did, we become big. That's the biggest man you can be. The biggest human you can be is to be on that natural pattern of fitra, as Adam was created and as the human being was made. And as we deviate over time, we get smaller and smaller and smaller. Because the real human is the real Superman. And that's why Clark Kent, you know, he was dressed like the average common guy, and he had his glasses on, right? He couldn't see, and he's fumbling around, kind of simple. But when the time came and he took off those clothes of the world, yeah, Superman was underneath, you know. And then he could change the world. Thanks a lot, brothers and sisters. May Allah bless you with a beautiful Ramadan. May Allah bless us all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.